Hello and welcome to the Defining Your Niche podcast, where we dive into alternative asset classes within commercial real estate, specifically self-storage and small bay industrial flex. Today, we're staying in the self-storage business. Really excited to have someone who I've followed his journey over the last year plus, the CEO of TractIQ, Noah Starr. Noah, thanks so much for taking some time to come and visit with us today. Appreciate it.
Awesome to be here. I love the positive vibes and all the energy you bring across the board. So I'm excited.
Man, I appreciate that so much. It's something that I spend a lot of time making sure I stay positive. It's something that's close to my heart. And anyone who follows my story knows I have a little brother with Down syndrome. So when you give me that compliment, I'm very blessed by it because it's something I take very seriously. So I appreciate you noticing that. I want to stick this with Noah, though, so we're going to get back on you. And first thing I want to say is a huge congratulations on two folds. Number one, I met with you guys last April with TractIQ when you had just taken over the platform, really. I mean, you were just a couple of months into it, and then have been able to meet with you here more recently. Saw you at the trade show last week, and you guys had a pretty major milestone, right? Bringing the biggest REIT on board with your platform. So wanted to just start off by giving you congratulations on that. That's a pretty big hallmark for you.
Thank you so much. No, it's been a lot of fun. And yeah, I said this in my post, but public is ubiquitous in self-storage. So really, really cool milestone. And we have a lot of amazing customers and partners. So it's been a really, really fun ride that I'm excited to share more about.
That's fantastic. So I always start the podcast the same way, which is, self-storage is such a niche industry. It's such and nobody sits in third grade when their teacher asks them what they're going to do when they grow up, unless they're part of the Lindsay family or the Burnham family and says, I'm going to go into self-storage. I'd love to know how you got into this wonderful asset class that we find ourselves a part of.
Absolutely. My first foray into self-storage was back in 2018 when I worked for a lender and we financed essential assets across different verticals. But one of those was commercial real estate. So at the time in 2018, I was on the team where we underwrote a handful of public storage and CubeSmart ground up construction projects. I learned throughout that process how resilient self-storage has been throughout cycles, how, compelling of a thesis self-storage is. As you know, it's a bet on American consumerism, American dynamism and mobility, and it made intuitive sense. So 2018, I was on the lending side and spent some time there before moving into the equity side, where I worked for a large private equity company as well. So I spent 5 years in finance and real estate private equity. I was working crazy hours. I had always wanted to be an entrepreneur, even though it wasn't necessarily self-storage data, wasn't necessarily what I wanted to do in middle school. I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. So in April 2022, I left my corporate job the same week that I got engaged to my now wife, the same week that we bought our home together, and the same week that I bought my first self-storage property, all in one 7-day span, which I don't recommend to anyone watching this to do, to throw all your life events in 1 week. But that kickstarted my initial goal, which was to build an investment company of value add self-storage assets in undersupplied and growing markets. And I'm happy to keep going, but we've essentially acquired 12 sites across Texas, Tennessee, Arkansas, Michigan, and Ohio. We had institutional investment partners and always wanted to build a company and thought it would be an investment business. But what I realized over time was when I would look at deals, the data quality, I always had a lot of questions on. There were certain data sets that didn't exist that I thought that I needed. So we spent a lot of manual time trying to find some of that information. And that kickstarted a campaign that led to us finding a company called TractIQ on page 10 of Google. It was built in 2021 in partnership with a gentleman named Tom Hallaton and a data company. And right when they built TractIQ, Mr. Hallaton unfortunately passed away. So the company kind of sat there for 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
I'd never heard of it. And when we asked to license data to build our own product, they instead said, hey, what if you purchase the platform for us and partner together? So that's what we did about a year ago. And it's been a really fun journey ever since.
Man, listen, you got me about 15 questions I have based off of this. So I'm going to state three of them. One, I want to talk about 1 week doing everything in your life. The second thing I want to talk about is the choice to go a different route when you're having success. I mean, listen, 12 acquisitions in 3 years is a massive amount of success in self-storage, especially in the 3 years you've done it, because 22 to 25 has not been the easiest time frame to be acquiring new assets in this asset class. And then the third thing we're going to talk about, you mentioned the data sets that you weren't seeing that you wanted to get. So I'm going to go back to the first question, which is 1 week, everything at one time. How'd that feel like in the moment?
Yeah, I think it's a common question because it sounds crazy, but what I'll say is a lot of planning went into it. And I'll give you the engagement example first, right? You don't decide the day of to get engaged, right? There's a process to, find a romantic place, and you get the family on board, and you purchase the ring, and you do all that stuff. That's a 6 to 4 month process right there. The same is true for the investment business, right? Where it happened and culminated all in 1 week span, but there was a ton of planning, a ton of
Yeah.
time spent with mentors and family trying to make sure I was thinking about everything the right way. So it culminated in a crazy week that I don't want to relive again because it was probably too much, but there was a ton of planning that went into that week.
It's kind of where I was going with that question. And, from my own life experience, sometimes things just happen at one time, but it's never not without a whole lot of work that went into it before that particular week happened, right? There was a lot that went into making that week possible and obviously made it successful given where you're at now.
Yeah, 100%. And I'll even give you the example because I'm sure a lot of your listeners are investors, right? I mean, I I decided while I was working a full time job that on the side, I wanted to underwrite deals for my own investment company so I can jump into something that was real instead of jumping into something that was completely unknown. So, it really started in September of 2021. I was
Yeah.
underwriting, self storage properties within a 4 hour drive of my house, anywhere from 500,000 to $2 million purchase price, and just underwriting and iterating and building my model and talking to brokers. Right. But that was a whole process that culminated with us purchasing our first facility in the Houston area. But again, there was a lot of work that went into that, and which includes a diligence process and all sorts of things. So
You didn't close on a self-storage facility in a 7-day span without any
it doesn't
previous
work that
work? Come
way, as
on,
you
man.
well know.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of moving parts in it, and I actually was thinking about this morning, right? It's time. It's like we're in a chosen profession where, even a value add, like you're not identifying and closing in less than 120 days. Like you're gonna have time to go do some underwriting, to send an LOI, get lawyers to put a contract. I mean, there. So how do you cope with that? And we'll get into this relative to Tract IQ because that's what I was thinking about it. It's been over a year that you've been kind of working up this momentum in this. How do you handle the fact as an entrepreneur that there's not immediate gratification, that it is down the road gratification?
Yeah, I think it's really hard, right? And I'll share a story about this first facility that we bought because it's a little sad. But, you know, in terms of the delayed gratification, it's not even just delayed gratification because there's no guarantee you're going to have gratification. So a lot of times you have to just trust
Yeah.
that you and your team are on a direction that's exciting, that you think has a high probability of success, and you kind of have to trust your own swing.
Yeah.
And a lot of entrepreneurs, sometimes the gratification never comes. But when you think, if you believe with conviction and you have really great partners and
Yeah.
employees and folks who are working on your vision, it's really, really hard to grapple because I spent a lot of time asking myself, is this even worth pursuing? Right? Are we really doing the right thing, or is this a complete waste of time and effort? And fortunately for us, the momentum has shifted in a really positive way, but you don't really know.
This is the Jonah Hall, who was my most recent guest on the podcast, said something that I thought was amazing, which is you can't mitigate 100% of the risk on any deal you look at, right? And so when you factor that in, I of course spend more time in ground up development than I do in value add, and then you're talking about a year, 2 years to even get the thing out of the ground, 5 year life cycle to see any really significant return, and there's no guarantee, right? And so I guess what I want to ask here, and I still have those other two questions that are still in my head, which I'm proud of myself for because I still remember them. How does how did Noah Starr get to this place where you wanted to go down this entrepreneurial path? Because let's be real, it's not rainbows and butterflies. It looks great when you see a person have a liquidity event, right? That's great, but as you said, that's not a guarantee. So what was happening in Noah Starr's life that kind of made you want to go down this road?
Yeah, I think my dad has been an entrepreneur for 20 years, so I've always looked up to him as a role model. And I've always been a voracious reader, and I love
Love it.
reading books about Warren Buffett, Steve Jobs, all the great entrepreneurs and builders in history. And my biggest fear, even back to high school, was I would wake up as a 70-year-old about to retire, having never given it a shot, having never tried to build something
Love it.
new and innovative on my own. And hey, if I tried and failed, that's one thing, but I was never going to not at least give it a shot.
I love that. I'm going to swing back now. You are investing in self storage, and this opportunity gets put in front of you to buy TractIQ. You're clearly doing well with the strategy because listen, I know plenty of private equity companies looking for self storage that haven't bought two or three properties in the last 3 years, let alone as many as you were able to acquire. Why the decision to go down that road? Because that's a complete change in direction to go run a tech company versus running a self storage investment company.
Yeah, I'll start with this statement, but the truth is, had I known that buying Tract IQ would result in my investment company collapsing, right, intentionally collapsing, where I've committed to no longer buying properties, I wouldn't have bought Tract IQ. The original intent was to bolster the investment business, is to try to leverage the data to differentiate our own investment business. And once we acquired the company and we had customers and we were growing and people were really excited, I knew in my gut that I now realize not only is the market opportunity for Tract IQ bigger, but I couldn't in good faith also be pursuing acquisitions and competing with my customers. So, it took 3 to 4 months, after the Tract IQ purchase to realize, one, what we had and how great the technology and the data was. But number two, how it's going to result in me, destroying my own investment company. Of course, we're not going to sell unless it makes sense, and we still manage assets, but very much the intent was not to completely pivot when we did it.
I love that. And sometimes you go down a road and you don't know where that road's headed, right? And I guess that's kind of the height of the entrepreneurial spirit, is that you don't know where the road, you have a vision and you think you know where you're going, but how many times I can remember Jim Quick, who wrote a great book for a voracious reader like myself called Limitless. That's one of my favorite books ever. Quick, KWIK, for any of you readers out there. Wrote a book called Limitless, and I got a chance to talk to him in a mastermind I was in, and he said, you know what? Every once in a while, you got to check which wall your ladder is leaning against to make sure that when you get to the top of the ladder, you're actually at the top of the place you want to be. And I thought that was so mind blowing to me. I've been an entrepreneur. My dad, much like yours, quit his job in 1991 when I was a junior in high school. So speaking about quitting your job when you're buying a house and getting married, I was just getting ready to go to college. My dad quit his job and opened his own business. Interestingly, this is a funny story. I'll throw my dad under the bus. Started his own business only because he put the wrong phone number on his resume and didn't get any calls back in the first 3 months. He only found that out because a friend of his called him 3 months later and was like, hey, there's the wrong phone number on this. And he sort of had to start his own business. But anyway, entrepreneurial spirit. So many times we end up in a place different than where we expected to go, which is not always a bad thing. So I'm going to dig in a little bit to something you said at the beginning, which I thought was powerful. You were having a hard time getting certain data sets that you felt were really important. What were those data sets that you were looking at that didn't exist? Because there's, listen, like full transparency, there's other data platforms in the space, and give some data that is considered important. What was Noah Starr looking for that he wasn't getting in the currently available stuff a year and a half ago that led you down that path?
Yeah, that's a great question, which I'll come back to in a sec. Because I want to say, you know, to your point, Tony Robbins has this great saying around, the mental reframe of the idea, instead of life is happening to you, life
Yep.
happening for you, right? And
Yep.
I think your dad in that case, he put the wrong phone number. That obviously meant, oh my gosh, no jobs are
Yep.
happening. He feels like he's probably not a good candidate, but instead it leads him to starting his own business, right? That's
Couldn't agree more.
that's
Couldn't
the
agree. I want to expound on what you said, because one of the reasons that Thaddeus Campbell at 51, that people routinely mention me as having infectious positivity. And I'll tell you that that concept that life is happening for me and my inherent belief in that, in the worst moments, by the way, like I got a concussion that I had a headache for 3 years. I lost $100,000 in my house flipping business. I was in a position in self storage where I a deal happened that I didn't really agree with what happened. The reality was all of those things led me to a better place. And I believe that in the moment, like when those things were happening to me, that they weren't bad. They were telling me, hey, it's time to go somewhere else. It's time to do something else. And in every single instance in my life, as I look back, in those moments where you're scared, you're crying, you're having a tough time, the end result was way better than where I was at when something went south. And so I fully believe in that. Again, I don't mean to make this about Thaddeus Campbell, but you bring up a point that I believe in so importantly. And I think it's important for people to hear that when you're going through tough things, it's happening for you, not to you, right? As Tony Robbins so eloquently put it. Let's get back to the question I asked, though, which is
yes.
what were the data sets that Noah Starr was looking for in your investment company that you weren't seeing in the market, and you felt the need to go out and find it?
I'll talk about some easy ones and then potentially some more interesting ones. But some easy ones that TractIQ has solved, right? I wanted to understand, as demand is slowing in storage, right? What are potential demand drivers? That's all the new residential construction coming into the area. It's all the new commercial construction coming into the area. So I wanted to
Yeah.
be able to track, where are all the Walmarts or Home Depots opening up? Where is all the new corporate headquarters popping up? I want to be able to track all of that information. I wanted to see where all the new home builders are building, from Lennar to KB Homes to Meritage Homes. Where are all those popping up? And what's the delivery timelines, so that I can understand, if supply per capita looks elevated
Yeah.
today, how can we underwrite to supply per capita tomorrow? So I think those were some immediate things that we have already fixed, but I think we could have a very interesting conversation about holistically real estate data, because I think there's still a lot that's missing.
Talk to me about it. We got plenty of time.
Well, I think you think real estate data fundamentally, right? All of the metrics that you look for in a development, to me, are peripheral metrics, right? And you think about it, the data that you're looking at, let's say supply per capita of storage, total
Right.
square foot of storage divided by the number of people who live there based on the census. You're talking about website rental rates. What do those look like? We're talking about like the median income based on the census. These are all metrics that are correlated to successful outcomes, but you need to know the actual operating performance of self-storage facilities in the area, because you don't want to invest in an area if
Yeah.
occupancy is dropped by 20%. You want to invest in
Right.
areas where occupancy has increased by 20% and in-place rates have increased. So to me, real estate data holistically, it's all about peripheral metrics, at least in self-storage. And we're working every day to really add more direct ways to measure and understand supply and demand.
So now this begs for me to ask the obvious question, which is, for the last 2 years, 3 years, I can remember hearing the word ECRI for the acronym ECRI for the first time at the Investor Summit in New York in January 1st of 2024. All the REITs were on stage. Somebody asked, "Hey, ECRIs are here," and they were like, "They're staying." All five. U-Haul, Life Storage, and Extra had merged by that point. U-Haul was there. NSA, Cube, Extra, Public Storage. Hey, ECRIs aren't going anywhere. Existing customer rate increases. For those who don't know the phrase, but most of you do. And I'm saying this because me as a developer, specifically if I'm looking at a self-storage development, the old way was to go check out web rates, call stores locally. Hey, what's your rates? The reality is in 2025, in March of 2025, I'm not getting a clear picture of that facility's performance the way that I did 3, 4, 5 years ago. So how do we as developers, and how does TractIQ as a data platform give me information that is more real?
Yeah, the answer is come back to us in a month and I'll have a cool announcement to be able to share with you. But I completely agree. I think that, you know, historically, uh, it's been relatively easy to understand the market dynamics. And I have a piece coming out in MSM where I'm going to talk about transparency and how there's such a lack of transparency that actually leads to bad decision making, right? If just because the website says one thing, number one, I already think it's arguably an understated rent.
Yeah,
Even look at Extra Space, the web rate, they then have three actual prices that you can actually move into. But
right.
website rates no longer tell you the story.
Street
Calling
rates don't even tell you the story anymore, quite frankly. I've been
street rate,
told straight from someone at the REIT that they're choosing the street rate based on what discount they want to say they're offering on the web rate. Like, hey, we know we want the web rate to be $40. Are we going to make the street rate $80 because we're going to give a 50% discount this month, or are we going to make it $100 because we're giving a 60% discount? Like, the street rate means nothing anymore, which again, to the point I said earlier, it makes it very hard on the development side, even the value add acquisition side, because you're playing the same game in value acquisition of trying to determine where you might push rates to.
100%. So to me, not only are data providers responsible for adapting to the current realities and providing information that could help break through this transparency gap, but to me, it's a whole industry responsibility where operators, investors, brokers, vendors, and data providers, we all need to do our part in actually providing information on what's going on the ground. Because right now, the REITs will have a ton of data that they believe is their own secret sauce, while the rest of the industry has to fly blind. And
Right.
but TractIQ, our biggest company value is transparency, and our goal this year is to break through that. Which, if you even think about hotels, if you're familiar with STR, all of the large operators actually report their data that then gets reshared with lenders and investors.
Yeah.
And you know what you've seen is with transparency, rates actually increased because people now have more confidence into what's going on in the area. Investors are investing in better areas, right? When I say rates increase, I don't even mean the sense of, oh, everyone's able to jack up rates. I mean, investors are investing in areas that need investment, not
Investment.
investing in
Yeah.
areas that are over.
I you say something that's so poignant and timely in self storage, and one of the things I worry about is because the larger operators, a guy who owns 150 stores, he has data to show him where to go. Or Extra Space, Cube, Public, Extra Space and Public, especially where there are literally thousands of stores. They have data, and fortunately, in certain instances, they've been willing to share that data with me as I'm looking at a particular area, especially if it's if they self-owned property. They'll be transparent there. But if they don't own the property in the area, it's very challenging. So I guess my question here is, without something like Tract IQ kind of pulling the veil back, are we kind of pushing out a smaller operator from the industry, which I think has kind of been the lifeblood and the reason that self storage has been such a great space and such great people, because it's been, salt of the earth type people.
Yeah, I think what I have heard a lot in the industry, which I'm sure you've heard too, is the concept of if you can't beat them, join them.
Yeah,
So a lot of people are just building their
100%.
strategy around the REITs because they don't have any way to be able to defend or provide context to their investors that they know better, right? They can run it better.
Yeah.
And that's because there's no edge, there's no data that the rest of the industry has to be able to compete. So that doesn't mean that we can't compete, but it does mean that there's going to have to be, some more mutual trust. There's going to be some more data sharing. There's going to have to be some more transparency that folks, participate in, so that the edge can be spread out across the industry, not just for the very, very largest companies.
If you would, I'd love for you to take me into Tract IQ for a minute and show me a little bit, because this blew me away. And I'll be honest, and I shared this feedback with you guys a year ago when I first looked at it. The user interface was not friendly a year ago. And then I met with you guys a couple weeks ago and got a chance to get back into the platform. Amazing, amazing improvement. So kudos to that. I always am impressed with people that are listening and seeing and improving. But I want you to show it to us and show a little bit, especially exactly what you're talking about, some of those data points that are helping a developer understand. Listen, everyone wants to be in the path of progress when they're developing, right? Nobody wants to develop something in an area that's not going to grow. And you've developed a tool that really helps lay out visually what the path of progress looks like.
Yeah, I'll give you an example here, and you can see my screen okay?
Yep, perfect.
All right. So I'll give you an example here that we can do. So when you look for development sites, Thaddeus, do you look
Yep.
for square foot per capita less than a certain metric, like
Yeah,
12,
usually looking for less than 8.
less than 8? Okay. What about median income?
60,000.
60,000. And then are you looking for positive population growth over a certain percent over the next 5 years?
Typically a 0.5% is my break even point.
Let's do one.
That makes perfect sense. Oh, you said 5 years. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah, yeah.
usually
So
I'm looking at 3. That's perfect.
for sure. And so right now in TractIQ, is there a state that, where are you based, Thaddeus?
I'm in outside of Philadelphia on the Jersey side of the Delaware River. So,
There you go. So this in TractIQ, we can show you every single area, whether it's zip code or county, that actually fits your criteria.
yep.
But what you can also do is overlay all of our self-storage supply as well. So
In
I'm
other
going to,
words, stuff that's in the pipeline
and existing.
and existing. Okay,
Yep.
perfect.
So how large of facilities do you look to buy?
I'm looking to build more than I'm looking to
Build,
buy, but
build or buy.
100,000 square feet.
100,000 square feet. And let's do non-designated REITs. So if we look into, you said you were, let's just go to
Camden, New Jersey. I'm 15
Camden, New
minutes from
Jersey.
there.
Let's see, Camden, New Jersey. So we can see a couple of facilities here. Let me just look at the zip codes. So if you were looking to buy facilities, this Secure Space Self-Storage Philadelphia facility actually checks all your criteria. It's
Love it.
106,000 net rentable square feet. It's in an area with a 3.8 square foot per capita. Really, really good metrics. And it could be an interesting opportunity for you to acquire. Now you're looking specifically about of new development sites, which we
Yep.
can also look at. But this is one of the things to be able to find deals more efficiently using data.
Yep. I love it. I love the visual, the easy visual as well. Like, hey, listen, lighter blue to darker blue. It's showing you how much something's meeting your demand, right?
For sure. And you take a look at, so these yellow pins are the ones that are actually in some degree of construction. But
Okay.
what I was talking about before, transparency, we provide all of the site information and even the start and end dates. And for you, like this one hasn't been updated since 2022, but there are plans that are developed. So it could be one where you actually can download
Could
our
go.
owner data and contact and try to buy these plans. How much time would that save you instead of having
Yeah.
to start from scratch?
Yeah. Love it. Love it. Show me the development overlay, because this is one piece of it. Actually, even a year ago when you first showed me the platform, that was the piece of it that had me the most intrigued. And now it's even better and laid out in a way that's so easy to understand.
Yeah, for sure. So in addition to all the self-storage supply, We track over 80,000 residential construction sites across the country. So all of these bubbles, I'll turn the storage off, represent all of the multifamily, single family detached communities all coming into the market. So not only when you're underwriting a site, you can go and look to see that this $209 million project just started last year. What is that going to do for your future self-storage demand if you're looking at a development site in this area?
Yeah. Again, kudos to you guys because you've made this about as user friendly as you can with even to the size of the circles, right? Like I know if there's a big circle, it's a bigger development. It's very, very cool how you guys develop this.
Yeah, no, it's been a lot of fun, and there's so much in here that if you're looking at a self-storage site like this extra space facility, not only are we tracking all of the housing, but I mentioned the commercial construction as well, right? We track over 330,000 commercial construction sites.
Yeah.
So you can see this $42 million office complex. We track retail, all of it, so that, in seconds, you can make a better decision like, hey, am I in a flood zone? No, I'm not in a flood zone. What are my traffic counts? Okay, 12,000 cars a day, right? Like we want to give you data in seconds so that not only can you find deals more efficiently, but you can spend less time on deals that you would have never needed to spend time on had you known certain things.
I think that time compression is easily the number one most important aspect to successful entrepreneurship, right? If you can't compress time, you're fighting a losing battle against someone. If they figure out how to do it and you don't, you're losing every time. Noah, as crazy it is we've already gone over a half hour. I try and keep this to a half hour to honor my listeners, to honor your time. We'll have to get you back on the show again sometime. I had such a blast. You touched on some things that are near and dear to my heart. I apologize because I got carried away sometimes talking. I try really hard. My mom's gonna watch this. She's gonna call me. She's gonna be like, "You talk too much this week." It happens sometimes. It's my podcast, so I'll give myself a little grace on that. Want to thank you so much. And just like you said, for me, man, when I see you on LinkedIn and I see you at trade shows and I see your interactions, I got hooked up with you again through your friend Cody Baker, who was on the podcast a couple months ago. And just people speak very highly of you. And I love that. I love people that are doing good things in our industry, and want to thank you for that and continued success, man. It's been awesome to see the growth and see you hitting those milestones in your business.
Thaddeus, super grateful for the kind words, super grateful for having me on, and for all of the positivity and joy that you're bringing to the industry. I think it takes a lot to put yourself out there. And just kudos to everything that you're building, both professionally and personally. So very grateful to be here.
Oh man, I appreciate you so much. Listen, that's it for this week's episode of the Defining Your Niche podcast. If you got anything of value whatsoever, please hit the subscribe button. Please hit the like button. Give us a comment. You guys, very easy to find Noah. He's all over LinkedIn. You'll see his information down at the bottom, tractiq.com. Very easy to find him. If you haven't done a demo of his platform yet, get on it. It is as easy as he made it look. It's that easy to pick up. So appreciate you, Noah. Thanks for coming on, and look forward to seeing many more good things for you guys.
Likewise. Thanks so much, Thaddeus.
Thanks everyone for watching. Have a great week.